I saw my wife kissing her ex at my stepson's birthday party. They wanted to reconcile and become a family once again. I filed for a divorce and walked away. Now she is begging me to come back because he abandoned her once again. My name is Preston, and it all started with Delilah, the woman I thought would be my partner forever. I was 34 years old then, working as an engineer for a construction company. Life was steady, good job, solid routine, nothing too complicated. I wasn't really looking for anything, not in the romantic sense, anyway. But then she walked in. It was a Tuesday morning, and we had one of those long, drawn-out project meetings that needed too many people in one room and far too many PowerPoint slides. I remember glancing toward the back of the room as I set up my laptop, and there she was. She wasn't an engineer, not even part of the architectural team. Delilah was handling the logistics, setting up the meeting room, arranging the coffee, coordinating lunch orders. But none of that mattered the moment I saw her. I don't know how to explain it without sounding ridiculous, but I felt something shift. Her presence hit me like warm sunlight on a cold day, sudden, unexpected, but deeply welcome. Most people would have agreed. She was stunning. Brown hair falling in soft waves over her shoulders, and these green eyes that didn't just look at you. They held stories, secrets, things I suddenly needed to understand. When the meeting finally ended, everyone else filtered out, and she started clearing up the coffee cups. I stayed behind, pretending to check some numbers on my screen, but really, I was trying to build up the nerve. Finally, I said, "Hey, you handled everything today really smoothly. It was kind of a mess last week." She gave this little laugh, light and unexpected. "Yeah, that's what I do. Bring order to chaos." "I could use some of that in my life," I said, half joking, half trying to keep her attention. She glanced at me. Her head tilted slightly. "Are you flirting with me, engineer guy?" I grinned. "Maybe. Is it working?" "Maybe," she said with a smirk. "Depends how charming you plan to be. Charming enough to ask for your number and not get turned down." That was the beginning. We started seeing each other after that. Dinners, movies, lazy Sunday walks in the park. With her, everything felt lighter. Like the world made more sense. She had this way of speaking. Like every word mattered. Like she meant what she said and wanted you to listen. And I did. God, I did. I hung on every word, every laugh, every glance she sent my way. Then, a few weeks in, she looked different. Not sad, just tense. We were sitting in a cafe, 2 cups of coffee between us, a slice of banana bread neither of us had touched. I noticed her twisting her ring around her finger over and over. "Delilah?" I asked, setting my cup down. "What's going on?" She took a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you, and I'm afraid it might change things." My heart thudded. "Okay, just tell me." She looked away for a second, then right into my eyes. "I have a son. He's 5. His name is Kason." I didn't say anything right away. I think she took that as a bad sign because her whole body seemed to shrink in on itself. "I didn't want to hide it," she said quickly, "but I also didn't want to scare you off. Most guys don't stick around when they hear that. I needed to tell you before this went any further." I could see the fear in her eyes. Fear and something else. Hope. And it did something to me. It cracked something open. I reached across the table, took her hand in mine, and said softly, "It doesn't matter. I still want to keep getting to know you." Well, looking back, now I know that this is the moment I screwed up. Kason was a quiet child, one of those who looks at you with curious eyes but doesn't say much at first. The first time I met him, he greeted me with a shy hello and quickly hid behind Delilah's legs. It was sweet, almost protective. I could see the uncertainty in his little face as if he wasn't sure who I was or whether he should trust me yet. Delilah noticed my gaze and gave me a soft, understanding smile. "He's shy," she said, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. "It takes him time to warm up to new people." I nodded, not wanting to rush things. I crouched down, giving Kason the space he needed and said gently, "Hey, Kason, it's nice to meet you." He peeked out from behind his mother's legs and gave me a small wave before retreating again. It wasn't much, but I could tell that it was a start. As the days went on, I learned more about Kason and his story. Delilah explained that his father, Julian, had abandoned them when Kason was about to turn 5. She told me how Julian had been irresponsible, never really caring about his son, and then he just left without a word. I felt a tight knot form in my chest as she spoke. I couldn't understand it. How could someone walk away from a child? From Kason? It made my blood boil. I wanted to do something, anything, to make up for the neglect and hurt he had already endured in his short life. "I don't know how he could do that to you or to Kason," I said, my voice thick with anger. "I want you both to know you'll never have to worry about being left behind again." Delilah's eyes softened, a mix of gratitude and sadness flickering there. I didn't want him to have another man in his life unless he was going to stay. But you're different. I can see it. And that was it. I was in. Not just for Delilah, but for Kaysen too. If I was going to be with her, I was going to be there for him too. Not just as a boyfriend or some distant figure, but as someone he could rely on, someone he could trust. Eventually, I moved in with him. Delilah's apartment was small, one of those places where the walls were thin and the furniture had definitely seen better days. But she made it work. It felt cozy lived in. It was a space that carried the weight of their lives, of the challenges they'd faced together. It wasn't much, but it was home. Still, I wanted more for them. I wanted them to have more. So I rented a bigger house in a quiet neighborhood, a place with a yard where Kaysen could run and play without worry. I covered the rent, the bills, everything. I didn't do it because I felt obligated. I did it because I loved them. Delilah decided to quit her job, telling me she wanted to spend more time with Kaysen. I didn't mind. I made enough to support all three of us, and it made me happy to see them comfortable to know they were taken care of. Over time, Kaysen began to open up to me. At first, he was hesitant, still unsure of me. But as the weeks passed, I saw him change. He became more vocal, more expressive. He smiled more. He followed me everywhere, almost like a shadow. It felt good. I felt like I was becoming a part of his world. We started doing things together, just the two of us. I took him to school, helped him with his homework. On weekends, we went on adventures. I remember the first time I took him to an amusement park. It was one of those places where the roller coasters make you scream until your voice is hoarse. Kaysen was nervous at first, his eyes wide as we climbed into the seats. I could see him clenching the straps tightly, but I told him, "It's going to be fun. I've got you." When it was over, his face was lit up with excitement. He ran up to me, threw his arms around me in a big hug, and said, "That was the best thing in the world." His joy was contagious. I couldn't help but laugh and ruffle his hair. "I'm glad you liked it, buddy." I bought him video game consoles, new clothes, toys, anything he wanted. But it wasn't about spoiling him. It was about giving him the childhood I never had. A childhood where someone cared enough to show up, to be there, to make memories. My dad died when I was little, and my mom had to work double shifts to raise me on her own. I didn't want Kaysen to feel that same absence. I knew what it was like to miss a father figure, to grow up without that support. I wanted to be there for him in every way I could. Delilah seemed happy too. In the beginning, everything felt perfect. She told me that she'd never met anyone like me, that I was a gift from heaven. She showered me with affection, kisses, her homemade meals, everything. At night, we'd stay up late talking about our future. We talked about getting married, having another child, traveling together. We dreamed of a life that felt so right, so perfect. I was completely in love, blinded by love. I didn't see the signs. There were little things that, looking back, make me realize I was an idiot for not paying attention. For example, Delilah never talked about her ex-husband, Julian. I knew he'd left them when Kaysen was young, but it wasn't a topic that ever came up in conversation. Still, sometimes I catch her staring at her phone with a strange expression, almost like she was waiting for something. One evening, I asked her what's going on. "You seem distracted." She quickly shrugged it off, her usual smile returning. "Oh, it's nothing. Just checking social media." I didn't push her on it. I trusted her, and I didn't want to question her. But now, those moments feel like red flags. And then there was the fact that even though I paid for everything, rent, bills, groceries, all of it, Delilah never really seemed grateful. It wasn't that she was rude, but there was this feeling that she took it all for granted. I'd buy Kaysen a toy or new clothes, and Delilah would say, "How nice." But there was no real thank you, no appreciation. It wasn't that she was ungrateful. It was just, like, she expected it. Like, it was my duty to take care of them. But I ignored it. I thought, "It's fine. We're building something together. It's going to be fine." Then there were the times Kaysen would mention his dad. It wasn't much, just little things. But looking back, I see the clues. I remember once, we were at the park, and Kaysen said, "My real dad used to take me to the park." Another time, while playing with some new toys, he said, "My real dad knew how to do this." I brushed it off. He was just a kid. It's normal for him to miss his father, right? He didn't know any better. But now, I know those words were more than just innocent remarks. They were hints at what was coming. The months passed, and everything between us seemed perfect. We celebrated Kaysen's 6th birthday with a big party at a park, complete with inflatables and a superhero cake. The 7th birthday was even bigger, held at an event hall with entertainers and a magician. Kaysen was in heaven, and I felt like the best stepfather in the world. Then Delilah and I got married that year in a simple but beautiful ceremony. She looked radiant in her white dress, and Kaysen, my little ring bearer, carried the rings with the biggest smile on his face. It felt like the beginning of our family. Nothing could break us, I thought. We were solid. But everything changed when Kaysen's 8th birthday came around. I wanted this birthday to be unforgettable. I spent more than $1,000 on the party. I hired a magician, booked an event hall, got custom invitations, and organized everything I could think of. I wanted to give Kaysen the best birthday he'd ever had. It was going to be unforgettable. I rented a luxurious event hall decorated with Kaysen's favorite movie themes, catering for all tastes, a clown show, a live band, and even a candy table that looked like it was taken out of a fairy tale. We invited all of Kaysen's friends, his classmates, his cousins, anyone who could make his day special. I wanted this party to be perfect. I wanted Kaysen to feel like he was the most special child in the world. Delilah was excited, or at least, she seemed to be. Over the previous weeks, she helped me plan everything from the menu to the guest list, but there was something about her attitude that I couldn't quite put my finger on. She was quieter, more distant than usual. When I asked if anything was wrong, she'd just shrug it off, saying she was tired or that the party stress was getting to her. As always, I believed her. How stupid I was. The day of the party, everything was going great. The kids were running around the room, laughing and playing. The music was upbeat, and the adults were chatting, enjoying themselves. Kaysen was right in the center of it all, wearing the birthday crown I'd bought him, looking like the happiest kid in the world. I was busy making sure everything was going smoothly, talking to the catering staff, checking in with the entertainers, making sure everyone was having a good time. But then something changed. I saw Delilah leave the room, her phone in her hand, walking quickly as if she had received an important message. I didn't think much of it at the time. I assumed it was a call from a guest who'd gotten lost or something trivial like that. When it was time for the cake, everyone gathered around the table. Kaysen stood in front of his cake, the 8 lit candles casting a soft glow. We all sang happy birthday, and Kaysen closed his eyes as if he was making a wish. I smiled, watching him, knowing how important this moment was to him. Then, after a beat, he spoke up, his voice clear and a little too loud in the quiet room. "I wish my mom would marry my real dad again so we can be a perfect family again." The words hit me like a slap in the face. My stomach dropped, and for a moment, I couldn't breathe. I glanced at Delilah, who had just re-entered the room, her face pale as she looked at Kaysen. She didn't say a word. The room went silent, and all I could hear was the pounding of my own heartbeat in my ears. I didn't know what to do. My mind raced, trying to process what I had just heard, but I couldn't. I tried to smile to keep the moment light for Kaysen. The adults looked at each other uncomfortably, and the children didn't understand what was going on. Delilah turned pale, and I felt as if someone had punched me in the stomach. I tried to smile, to act like it was nothing, but inside, I was devastated. That was what Kaysen wanted after all I had done for him. I looked at Delilah, waiting for her to say something to correct Kaysen, but she just looked down and started cutting the cake as if nothing had happened. My heart sank. I didn't want to make a scene in front of everyone, so I swallowed the pain and kept going with the party, but something inside me shattered that day. The worst was still to come. After Kaysen blew out the candles, the atmosphere shifted. The adults pretended they hadn't heard anything, chatting among themselves with forced smiles, while the children kept running and screaming in excitement. I stood there holding a plate of cake, feeling like the ground was opening up beneath me. I kept looking at Delilah, hoping for some explanation, but she was busy cutting the cake, avoiding my gaze. Her silence was like a stab wound. Why wasn't she saying anything? Why wasn't she telling Kaysen that this was our family now? I tried to calm myself, telling myself that Kaysen was just a child who didn't understand the weight of his words. Maybe he missed his dad, Julian. Maybe it was normal for a child to dream of his parents being together, but something inside me wouldn't let me rest. There was something about the way Delilah acted, her silence, how she avoided my eyes. I decided not to make a scene. Not today. I had spent over $1,000 on this party, and I wasn't going to let a child's innocent comment ruin the day. Or at least, I tried. I continued with my role as the perfect host. I smiled. I talked to the guests. I made sure the clowns did their show and that the catering didn't run out of food. But no matter how hard I tried to stay in the moment, I couldn't shake the image of Delilah looking down at the floor, hiding something. Then, while the kids were playing in the inflatable area, I noticed she wasn't in the room. She had disappeared again, just like before when I had seen her leave with her cell phone. This time, I didn't let it go. I asked one of the moms to watch Kaysen for a moment and went looking for Delilah. The event hall was huge. There was a large backyard and a parking lot. First, I checked the women's restroom, but she wasn't there. Then I went outside to the garden, thinking she might be getting some air. Nothing. Finally, I made my way to the parking lot, a dark place where the light from the hall's lamps barely reached. My heart was racing, my instincts telling me that something wasn't right. And then I saw them. Delilah was pressed up against a wall, and a man was standing way too close to her. His hands were on her shoulders, and she wasn't pushing him away. At first, I didn't recognize him, but when he turned his head, everything clicked. It was Julian, Kayson's father, the man who, according to Delilah, had abandoned them without a second thought. But they weren't just talking. They were kissing. A slow, intimate kiss as if the world around them didn't exist. My blood went cold. The rage, the pain, and the disbelief hit me all at once. I had given everything for her. Everything. I paid every bill, rented a house for them to live comfortably, spent a fortune on this damn party. And now, I was watching this. I couldn't control it. I took a step forward, my shoe crunching against a stone on the pavement. They separated abruptly when they heard the noise, and Delilah's eyes went wide, like she had seen a ghost. I felt my heart pound in my chest, my mind swirling with confusion and anger. What the hell is going on here? I shouted, not caring who could hear me. Delilah stammered, Preston, it's not what you think. It's not. What do you mean, it's not what I think? I approached them, my body shaking with anger. I felt like I could explode at any moment. Julian took a step back, but he didn't look intimidated. He stood tall with a scruffy beard and an arrogant smile that made me want to wipe it off his face with a punch. And who are you? I spat, my voice shaking. The great Julian? The one who left his son and wife behind? What are you doing here? Easy, friend, Julian said, raising his hands in that calm, annoying way. I just came to see my son on his birthday. I'm not looking for trouble. Your son? I laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of joy. It was the kind of laugh you make when you're utterly stunned. The son you haven't given a penny to in years? The son I support? The one I take to school? The one I buy everything he needs? That son? Delilah tried to get between us, her hands trembling as she spoke. Preston, please don't do this. Not here. Do what, Delilah? My voice broke, and I felt the sting of tears threatening to fall, but I wasn't going to let them see me weak. Not now. Not make a scene because I find you kissing this jerk at the party I paid for, at Kayson's birthday, which I gave everything for, to make perfect. I almost choked on the words, the injustice of it all suffocating me. People began to leave the hall, drawn by the shouting. Some of Delilah's friends, Kayson's classmates' parents, even the entertainers, everyone was looking at us. I could feel their eyes like needles in my back, but I didn't care anymore. I was done pretending, done being the good guy, done turning the other cheek. Preston, lower your voice, Delilah pleaded, but her tone wasn't one of regret. It was as if she was annoyed I was embarrassing them. Lower my voice, I snapped, turning to Julian. You think you can just show up out of nowhere, kiss my wife, and stay as if nothing happened? Get out of here before I beat you up. Julian just laughed, that same smug grin plastered on his face. That was it. That laugh, arrogant and dismissive, was the last straw. I took a step toward him, fists clenched, ready to make him feel every bit of the rage boiling inside me. But before I could do anything, Delilah stepped in front of me. She pushed me. It wasn't a hard push, but it was enough to stop me. I stood there, seething, trying to process what was happening, trying to make sense of the situation in front of me. Then Delilah said something that I will never forget. Preston, do not make this any harder, she said, her voice shaky but firm. Julian has a right to be here. He is Kayson's father. I froze. A right? The guy who abandoned them, who left without looking back, had a right? And I, who had given everything, didn't? I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, I saw Kayson running towards us, his birthday crown crooked on his head. Someone must have called him. His eyes were filled with tears, and when he saw Julian, he shouted, "Daddy," his little arms stretched out toward him. I felt like my heart was being crushed. Julian lifted Kayson up effortlessly as if he were the father of the year, holding him with an ease I never could. He looked at me with that same superior smile that made my blood boil. And in that moment, everything I had built with Kayson, every single memory, every park visit, every video game session, every hug when he was scared, meant nothing. "Kayson, come here," I said, my voice trembling, trying to stay calm. "Come on, buddy. Come here." But Kayson didn't budge. He clung to Julian, his little arms wrapped around him as if Julian was the only person in the world who mattered. And then he said something that shattered me to my core. "I want to be with my dad and mom." My world tilted. It was like the ground beneath me had given way. I could feel my chest tighten, my breath catching in my throat. I felt my world collapse. Every moment of fatherhood I had given to him, every single second spent loving him, erased in an instant. "You are not my dad, Preston," he said, so matter-of-factly, like it was the simplest truth in the world. I stood there, unable to speak, my heart shattering into 1,000 pieces. How could this be happening? How could this little boy, who I had raised and loved as my own, say something like that to me. I looked at Delilah, hoping, needing her to say something, anything, to explain to Casson that this wasn't right, that I was still part of his family, that I had given him everything. But she just stood there, staring at the ground. And in that moment, I knew. She agreed with him. Delilah, I said, my voice trembling, tell me you do not agree with this. Tell me you do not want me to leave. She raised her head, and for a split second, I thought maybe, just maybe, she would apologize, that she would say it was all some kind of misunderstanding. But instead, she said it. Preston, I think it's best that you leave. We need space to be happy. Happy. Happy without me. After everything I had done for them, after all the sacrifices, all the late nights working, paying for everything, organizing a perfect birthday party, they were kicking me out. Kicking me out as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience, an unwanted guest. I looked at Julian, still holding Casson, like the picture-perfect dad, and then at Delilah, who didn't have a single ounce of remorse in her eyes. And then I understood. It wasn't just Casson's wish. This was something they had already planned. Julian hadn't shown up by accident. Delilah had invited him, and the two of them had been talking behind my back. All this time, I had been the one paying the bills, organizing the party, being the fool who believed in our family. They were conspiring to get me out of their lives. Rage burned inside me, but I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. I took a step toward Delilah, closing the distance between us until I could see the nervousness in her eyes. You want me to leave? Fine, I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. But do not expect me to keep paying for your life for another second. I turned, not waiting for her response, and walked toward my car, ignoring the shocked gazes of the guests and the murmurs of disbelief. I heard Delilah calling my name, but I didn't look back. I couldn't. I got in my car, slammed the door shut, and started the engine, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I didn't know where I was going, but I sure as hell knew I couldn't go back to that house, to that life I had given everything for. Delilah and Casson, they had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I stayed in a hotel that night. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Delilah kissing Julian, Casson calling him daddy, the three of them telling me to leave. It felt like my world was falling apart, and all I could do was replay it over and over in my head. But amid all that pain, something else began to grow. A cold, clear determination. If they wanted to live without me, let them. But I was done. I was not going to be their ATM anymore. I wasn't going to give them another cent, not a penny. The next day, I canceled everything. All the bills I was paying, the house rent, electricity, water, internet, cell phones, everything. I called the landlord and told him I wouldn't renew the contract, that Delilah and Casson would have to leave in a month. I wasn't going to make it easy for them to keep living off me. Then I went to the house when I knew they weren't there. I packed my things, taking only the essentials. I didn't touch anything I had bought for them. The toys, the clothes, but I took the PS5. Let Casson's daddy buy him one. But the house? No. I wasn't going to leave them a place to continue using me. When Delilah found out, she started calling me. Voicemails at first, furious, asking how I could be so cruel that Casson wasn't to blame. And then the messages shifted. Please, Preston, please don't do this to us. At least let us have the house. We have nowhere to go. I listened to every message, and each one just fed the mix of anger and satisfaction growing inside me. Did they really think they could kick me out of my own life and continue living like royalty? No. It was over. A week later, I met with Delilah at a cafe. She arrived looking tired, her face worn down with dark circles under her eyes, something I had never seen before. Casson wasn't with her. She said she had left him with her mother. She tried to take my hand, but I pulled away, not wanting any more of her touch. Preston, I'm sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I made a mistake. I don't know what happened to me. Julian. He looked for me, and I thought maybe I could give him another chance for Casson, but I don't want to lose you. I looked into her eyes, searching for some sign that she was serious, but all I saw was a woman who was scared. Scared because her world of luxury, the one she had built off my back, was collapsing. You're sorry, I said with a bitter laugh. Are you sorry because you messed up or because you no longer have someone to pay your bills? Her face paled, but she didn't respond right away. I could see the guilt in her eyes, but there was something else too, an edge of defensiveness, like she didn't want to admit it. She remained silent, and that was all the answer I needed. I got up, leaving some money for the coffee, and said, I am not giving you another penny, Delilah. Go figure out your life with Julian since you love him so much. Julian had left her. Delilah admitted it almost in a whisper as if the words weighed too much to say aloud. He said he wasn't ready for this again. I couldn't help but laugh, but it wasn't a real laugh. It was bitter, full of contempt. He left? What a surprise! The great Julian, the perfect father, perfect husband, left you again. And now you come to me as if I were your backup plan. Your ATM? Hell no, bitch, not anymore. I turned and walked out, not bothering to look back. At the end of the month, the landlord called me. He told me Delilah and Kaysen had left. They didn't leave much, just a couple of broken toys. She had begged him to let them stay longer, but he refused. She was crying as she left the house, saying she had nowhere to go. That was the last I heard about them. The divorce process was quicker than I thought it would be. I hired a lawyer, filed the papers, and just a few weeks later, we were in front of a judge. Delilah didn't have the money to fight it, so she didn't put up much resistance. We signed the papers in a cold office with a judge who barely looked up from his paperwork. Afterwards, Delilah tried to talk to me. Her voice cracked, but I didn't care. "Preston, please," she said, tears in her eyes. "I don't want us to end like this. We can fix it for Kaysen." "For Kaysen?" I laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. "Don't use Kaysen as an excuse, Delilah. You did it for yourself. It was always about you. You wanted Julian. You wanted the luxuries. You wanted everything without giving anything in return. Now, face the consequences." Her face faltered. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She looked at me as if she thought there was still some part of me that cared, some part of me that might want to fix things. But there wasn't, not anymore. The truth was clear now. She had never cared for me the way I had cared for her. I didn't have anything left to give her, and I wasn't going to let her use me anymore. She had made her choice, and now it was time for her to live with it. She didn't insist again. She signed the papers and left with her head down. I didn't watch her walk out. I just stayed there, numb, feeling like the weight of everything had finally been lifted, even if it was in the most bitter of ways. A few weeks later, I learned from a mutual friend that she'd gotten a job as a cashier at a supermarket. The salary barely covered rent for a small room in a cheap neighborhood where she lived with Kaysen. They had no furniture, just a mattress on the floor and an old stove. Kaysen no longer went to the private school I had enrolled him in. Now he was in a public school wearing a uniform that was too big for him because Delilah couldn't afford to buy a new one. Part of me felt sorry for Kaysen. He didn't deserve that life, but it wasn't my responsibility. He had made his choice, and so had Delilah. He had told me I wasn't his dad, and Delilah, well, she had made it clear where her priorities were. They both chose the life they had now, and while I wish things were different for Kaysen, I couldn't fix it. It wasn't my job anymore. Delilah had wanted to play with my heart, my money. She had used me for everything I was worth, and now she was paying the price. Sometimes, I think about Kaysen and wonder if he's okay. I hope he is. I hope he's not caught up in the mess she's made, but I can't save him.